Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Bitcoin Wells Deep Dive, the show where we try to go below the surface on Bitcoin topics involving the technology and the philosophy that make Bitcoin work. Today, we're going to be talking about a very timely topic, randomness and entropy, which was at the heart of the recent ColdCard debacle, which, despite the headlines, wasn't really a hack. It was just an issue in the devices that they weren't creating true randomness when they generated the seed phrase, meaning that machine models could quickly find all the possible seeds and find your seed. So today I'm bringing on an expert who I'm sure is already cringing at my novice explanation of this, Alex Waltz, who's going to explain in more depth how randomness and entropy work. He's not only a respected researcher in the field, but a filmmaker, which is how I found him. He makes really well done short films involving his research into Bitcoin and its history. But without further ado, let me bring up Alex Waltz.
Hi, hello. Good to be here. The only thing that I cringed at is that you called me an expert. That's the only thing that bothered me.
Okay.
I don't think there's a word that annoys me more in the English dictionary than expert.
What would you prefer?
Crazy
Knowledge
motherfucker.
researcher.
Crazy motherfucker. Crazy motherfucker.
Works.
That's the best description.
I prefer that too.
Yeah, maybe for the audience, all jokes aside, I should maybe share a bit why actually I'm here, and if there is actually a good reason to actually listen to me. I'm Alex Waltz. I've been in the Bitcoin space for quite some time, and I've worked on various projects during the years. A lot of mining stuff in the early days, somewhat more of a recent project before I started getting into filmmaking. Well, I had an OTC disc in London, and I kind of closed that down specifically to pursue filmmaking. And most recently, I've did some research into the early days of Bitcoin, into Bitcoin's launch specifically, and I unraveled 3 discoveries. And I mean, that was pretty vital. I think almost everyone saw that.
That's how I found you. That's a great documentary.
Well, thank you very much. So that's probably how you heard of me, and I got a bit more attention from that, but that's not really related to what we're talking here. I should say, like, before I started doing this thing, and just about when I got into filmmaking, I got really, really into the idea of cryptography. I realized that one big lacking part in my understanding of Bitcoin was cryptography. So I said, you know what I'm going to do? Let me just focus and let me just try to learn some cryptography, because I need to understand these things. And the first topic that comes up, and we'll probably understand why it's important and why this is the first topic anyone should learn when they want to understand cryptography, was entropy. And in 2021, I spent quite a bit of time. I mean, I went full crocodile, and I read everything that was to read, every paper, anything that I could find my hands on. I try to read and try to understand what was happening. And funny enough, a lot of those, this is like 2021, this is like 5 years ago. And considering the recent ColdCard hack and whatever, that content proved to be like absolutely very relevant right now, which in some way makes me feel so good about myself, because like, oh man, I'm so fucking good. Of course, I'm such a smart guy. But at the end, I really wish this opportunity for the content to show that it's relevant would have came, with on a more positive note.
Yeah, maybe it could have saved more people, but it's like, for me too, like it's almost an embarrassment, because I knew some of the things that you could do to be safer, and I wasn't doing them. Like I myself had a ColdCard that I was trusting to generate the entropy, and I was in the danger zone myself. So it's like one of those things, some people just have to learn the hard way. Even if you know the right things to do, you're not always going to do them. So I think that's why what we're doing today is really important too, just to show people how easy it is, and what steps you can take to be secure today, so you don't have to wait for the next horrible event to wake up.
Yeah, well, I actually don't think this is necessarily a failure on education, because there's a lot of resources, not just the stuff that I wrote, but speaking of, I did actually give a talk in 2021 that was called How to Not Trust Hardware Wallets, and it was specifically focused on the topic of entropy. I also, maybe we're going to touch on this a bit later in detail, I also wrote some threads about like multiple ways which randomness and entropy in specific in Bitcoin hardware wallets, and even computers could be attacked by a nation state, which is not what we're dealing with here, but again, still another very important attack which you should like keep in mind, and a bunch of other things. I mean, I really have quite a a few things from there. But I don't think this was a failure on education. I just think this is a failure on what the posture in the Bitcoin community is right now, because we just kind of gone away. Like back in the day, it was embarrassing to not learn stuff. It was just kind of this embarrassment. It's not like someone would shame you or something, but you just that's how you would participate, and you would be a member of the community. You would learn stuff, and you would try to put out what you learned. You had to provide some sort of like intellectual output, and that was very much appreciated and applauded. And then of course more people came in, and more normal people and whatever, and it's kind of absurd to expect that to be the case. But we just got to this other extreme where in fact, if you actually try to do any sort of intellectual output, it's quite the opposite. If you don't repeat what everyone is saying, it doesn't even matter if it's real or not. It's kind of like it's almost like this circus or this tragic play where everyone is kind of doing the exact opposite thing, and sorry to say so, but again, there's nothing that's going to no social dynamic is going to compensate for anyone's lack of understanding of Bitcoin. And I guess, as the old saying goes, the chickens came home to roost. And I'm sorry, because the problem is like people who actually did everything right got fucked in the ass because of this thing, so it's kind of tragic, but I think that's a specific failure on the social dynamics that we have here. And I'm more than happy to even go into the detail even more there, or what specifically I think is wrong. But
yeah, I think you had a basic sort of outline of how you wanted to flow. I don't mind following that at all. We can touch more on the ColdCard issue, but I don't think we need to go too in depth into it. Maybe after, like you said, once we go through some of the explanations of the randomness and entropy and how that works, then we can kind of double back and explain how that affected the ColdCard issue. Yes.
Well, I mean, before we start this, I guess we should just 1 or few seconds explain the context of this. I don't know, it's like about 2 weeks ago at this point, I think almost 2 weeks ago, people who had cold cards realized that their Bitcoins were missing. Initially, this was thought to be like some kind of user error and some kind of a false alarm. And turns out that actually there was a bug in the code that specifically had to do with how the private keys are generated. And a lot of people lost a lot of money, and it was very bad. And the worst part is that even if you did everything absolutely right, you still could have lost the money and whatever, But turns out that, funny enough, so when you use a wallet, the expectation is that even if it's a hardware wallet or if it's like a software wallet or whatever wallet it may be, the expectation is that it generates secure private keys, because we have a good understanding of how these things work. There's industry standards for this, and that's the underlying agreement between a user and the software, right? Ethically, spiritually, and legally, and however you want to think about it. And the thing is that since people in Bitcoin were somewhat paranoid, there's also other ways which you can kind of like add extra bits here, extra things to be even more secure and even be even more sure. But these should not necessarily be a requirement. This is just if you want to do the extra step, because it adds a bit of complexity. And in specifically the ColdCard incident, what ended up happening is that if you would have actually added dice rolls, and maybe by the end of this talk, hopefully people understand why that was working, how that was doing. But if you would have done this extra step, which you don't have to do, you may have actually been able to save your funds or something. So that's kind of like what it was. So since the failure was clearly an entropy here, a lot of people are interested right now in the topic, and I think it shows even more how important this topic is. And well, that's why we're here and we're having this conversation. And
would you say that going forward, like maybe the dice rolls aren't an extra step? Maybe that is something people should be doing by default, or at least some, and maybe that's something you go over today as other steps people can do to add entropy or to verify the entropy on their devices?
Well, the thing is, there's always a trade-off, because, well, for people like you and me, adding dice rolls and stuff like this doesn't really seem like a big deal, right? Mm-hmm. But we're in a moment where we have normal people that sounds like such an alien thing for them to add the dice rolls and whatever. That yeah, exactly. That we can't be like. It's almost like you get a car and you're like, it doesn't come with a seat belt. It's like, dude, what? No. It's a car. What do you mean? I could add extra stuff if I want, sure, but that's not how it goes, And I just kind of feel that another very important distinction here is that which again, we'll have to think of who are the people who are going to use these wallets and this software. Each extra step could also become a foot gun. That's also another very important thing to understand. Like, and everyone knows there's no free lunch. So every security thing you add, it adds complexity, other opportunity to like fuck up. And again, UX is very important for security. If something requires extra steps to do and whatever, it's friction. So there's a less chance someone will do it. So I don't think so. I think again, the default thing is you shouldn't have to add this. You should do it if you want to be paranoid, if you're an advanced user or something like that.
That's a great point. That probably more Bitcoin has been lost from user error by far than any sort of theft like this. Like, so you have to be careful when adding these steps, that you're not doing it in a panic, that you're taking your time, and that you're doing the proper backups to make sure that you can reaccess your own wallet and that you're not locking yourself out. So yeah, that's a very good point. Do you want to? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's actually a very thing to maybe we should have started with, is that more Bitcoins are lost in error than theft or hacks or stuff like that. I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, by far. Do you want to go ahead and jump into the main topic of randomness versus entropy and take us down this rabbit hole?
Yes. Even though you did call me an expert, and I'm not going to forget you for that.
Yes. Wise man. How about wizened intellectual?
Oh dear God, that's even worse.
Getting worse, aren't we? Sorry.
Intellectual. Well,
Psychopath.
The thing is, like, the reason why that's perfect. The reason why I kind of like don't really like the idea of the experts and stuff like this. I feel like the most important thing is to always gather an intuition about something, about a system, about anything else. I don't really like the academic stuff. I feel like after I learn and I have an intuition, now we can get into the academic stuff. And I just kind of want us to kind of go over this concept, and hopefully, if I do at least a half a decent job, maybe people can have an intuition of what these things are, and then if they want afterwards, they could go on and study on their own. And we have to, since all of this is cryptography and it's very low level stuff and whatever, we have to start from the absolute minimal basis that we can, and we have to go to the point where we have to understand what is a computer. Clearly, everyone knows a computer is this device that you can watch porn and send Bitcoin transactions and do a lot of these things. But what actually is happening in this computer, right? Because it does seem like magic. And I'm sure everyone is familiar with this, that everything on a computer is a number. And this statement sounds quite confusing. I mean, I remember when I heard this the first time, it just made no sense to me. And I want us to spend a bit of time here and understand, why is everything on a computer a number? How could it be that this video stream right now that we have between us, it's a number? There's nothing intuitive about it. There's nothing that makes sense about it. And everyone should think this is false, in their deepest being, unless you know exactly what is happening there. And well, since we gave the video example, I guess one thing that we can clearly define what computer does, it's an information processing unit. It takes information and exports information, right? But now we kind of get to this idea of like, well, what is the most minimal thing that we can have that we can actually transmit information around? And the most minimal thing we can have a light bulb. Let's just say we have a light bulb, and this light bulb is either turned on or turned off. It's as simple as that. There's a light bulb here, and there's a switch when it's down, it's up, or whatever. And this seems like a very small amount of information, because what could this mean? Like, if we're two people on two different villages, this is somewhere in the, I don't know, old times and whatever, and there's a river over our villages here, and I want to tell you that the village is safe right now, I could leave the light bulb off. But when I turn it on, it means our village is being attacked. So now you could prepare for this thing. So already with this very simple concept, we managed to abstract and add some information and some meaning on top of this thing. And then now, still just with one single light bulb, we can go even further and add even more information. For example, in the morning, we know in the morning when we would never get attacked because the enemies want to sleep or something. So if in the morning the light bulb is open, then this could mean that, I don't know, we're out of food or something like this, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of gets to the point where, like, we just have two numbers here. We have a 0 and a 1, two states, and we can assign any meaning we want in this. And trust me, we'll get to the computer at some point. This will make sense if you feel a bit lost right now. And if this feels a bit too obvious, no, it'll get complicated soon enough. Now, well, this is a very good example. Practically speaking, if we actually were to use the system to communicate with each other over these two villages and over this bridge, realistically speaking, I think everyone would say, why don't we just use more light bulbs? Clearly, that's a more efficient way. And we can have a light bulb for when we get attacked. We can have a light bulb for when we run out of resources. We should have a light bulb for when we need to meet in the middle of the road to have these things. You can imagine a lot of this stuff. So now at this point, we have one single light bulb, which is on or off, where it's a 0 or a 1, and we have a specific meaning assigned to each and every one of them. I think now it's starting to get a bit more obvious. And the thing is, this is now a really good system, and I'm sure this was actually used a lot of time in the old times. They probably wouldn't use a light bulb, of course. They would use something else. And already we can add complexity to here, and you can see how we can we can just send information around the, I don't know, around the medium or something that is quite complex. But the problem right now is that these informations are still, these things are very limited. These are just yes and no questions. And the thing is that, well, one way we can add complexity here is we can add more light bulbs, right? And even though that's a very simple way to understand it, it's not efficient, because if we have to add 1,000 light bulbs, now it's hard to even which light bulb was that, when this happening and whatever. So it has this complexity. It's hard for us to kind of, reason with this thing. Yeah. But we can be even more creative about it. So we can just have 5 light bulbs, right? And we can actually have 5 light bulbs and have as many states here as you would have with 100 light bulbs. How we do this? Well, it's very simple. We don't keep track just of one light bulb. We keep track of multiple light bulbs. So we say if all the first 4 light bulbs are off and the last one is on, then this means something. But now if all the first 3 are on and the other one is off, this means something else. So you can combine so we have, for each light bulb, we have 2 states, on or off. And we have 5 light bulbs. So the total combination of these things is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 5 times. So already now, even though your head starts to feel a bit confused and whatever, we can see how actually each of these we can start with a very simple on and on switch, and we can add complexity over this stuff and whatever. And spoiler alert, this is exactly what a computer does. I know you don't think this is true, but it's not a metaphor. This is strictly exactly how a computer works. Now the thing is that when we look at this example that we have here, when we look at this example that we have here, we can start arranging all the states that we have. First one on, all the other off. First one on, the second one on, all the others off, and all this stuff. And we can assign a number to these ones. This is state number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. And we're going to have 2 to the power of 5, which means 2 multiplied 5 times states here. So already now we're very efficient because we have a very small number of light bulbs. We established a way to communicate with this stuff, and we're efficient about it, and we can transmit information around. And now you can even see how, if we want to get even more abstract or even more interesting with this stuff, we can have there's 2 ways we can scale complexity. We can add more light bulbs, or we can assign more combinations. And now to make it even more obvious and whatever, now if we would have a big number of light bulbs, think about this. If we'd have a big number of light bulbs, maybe not even that many, we can draw a pair of boobs with light bulbs, right? And here's the crazy part, because those light bulbs can still have their individual meaning, but when they're arranged all together, they look like this other thing, which is this silly thing and whatever. And that's exactly what's happening in a computer. And the reason why everything is a number on a computer is because we just have a lot of tiny, very, very tiny light switches like this. Something goes on and off. And I'm hand waving a bit here. And that's why everything is a number, because we have so many of these things and we abstract things on top of them and whatever. So at the end of the day, it's just that we have these transistors. This is what these light switches are called. They're transistors. And even your phone right now has billions of these things. And they got to the point where they're microscopical. right? So you can imagine, like, when you have so many of these things, that's why it feels like anything we have in the real world, we can put on a computer and whatever, So that's why everything is a number, because everything is a 0 or a 1. And then we just have operations between these things. And another very important thing to maybe understand here is that this 0 and 1 numbers, you can convert them very easily to mean numbers in base 10, the numbers we use and whatnot, So or you can convert them in hexadecimal, which is a specific type of numbering system that some part of the computer uses. But nonetheless, the reason why everything is a number is because we have this very simple concept of we either have information or have no information, or to be or not to be, if you want to be super poetic about it. And from this very, very basic thing, we abstract everything and we can reason about the world we have. Does this make any sense or something?
It does just seem very magical, like what you said. I mean, even as much as I intellectualize it and I've understood it, since a child, I remember trying to understand how CDs worked, and it just seemed like ludicrous. Like the laser is just bouncing off and then getting ones and zeros and then translating that into music or data. Like it's even when you understand it at a basic level, like it's hard for our brains to wrap around the layers of complexity that can be built on something seemingly so simple. And I mean, that's kind of like language too. Language is the same kind of concept of just building complexity on mouth sounds or letters. But yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. It is mind blowing, and it makes me think of, like, the Arthur C. Clarke, I think, quote of any advanced technology seems like magic. It's even our own technology, and it's been around for a long time, and it still seems completely magic. Yeah, it's hard for me to wrap my head around.
Well, exactly. That's where the magic comes, because if you when you start off from the light bulbs and it's very simple, you understand what we did. But every time you scale this thing, it's just hard to kind of come to understand and whatever. And that's what we've been doing for the last, I don't know, 100 years. Well, maybe less than 100 years. I don't know when we got a computer, 60% like this, So I just hope that this really convinced people why everything is a number, because I just don't like, for me, it's impossible to have an intuition of something when I just feel like there's this hole here, or there's this statement that I don't have an explanation for it. And that's why I wanted to start with this idea. So hopefully by this point, I convinced you that everything on a computer is a number. And now we have computers, and all these computers there clearly are some kind of like gizmos that do these mathematical operations. And I will say this, I did gloss over the fact that the way you kind of interact, so you have the numbers, but you also want to do some sort of operations between them. You want to add them, multiply them, and do all this stuff. And the way it actually works at this very low level, at this bit level, it's done with binary operations, which I'm not going to go into detail here, but one thing you should understand, that there's a perfect equivalency between using those weird binary operations, which is AND, OR, and SOR, and you can get multiplication and other types of like normal arithmetical operations. Or another way to think about it is like the computer has its own very low level mathematics that could always be translated into this human decimal, whatever mathematics we use. So now I feel like we're like, okay, I get it now. This is a machine that just crunches numbers. It's as simple as that. So everything that's going to be on this computer is going to be a number in some way. It's either a number that has multiple abstractions and multiple operations. But I know for a fact right now, if I really go down, 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 everything is either a 0 or 1, because that's what the computer natively talks about. And when we got to the point where we realized that everything is a number and whatever, we kind of what numbers are you? How do you interact with numbers, and how you transform numbers? How do you do all these things? It's via mathematics, right? But I already mentioned that the architecture of the computer is so specific that clearly you need your own specific types of mathematics. And that is exactly what cryptography is. Cryptography is just applied mathematics for computers in an adversarial scenario. And I feel like everyone understands that whenever you're using a computer, there's some sort of personal aspect to it, because, well, it's your computer. So when you talk about something being personal, you have to have some sort of way to enforce some kind of a walls. That's what makes this place right now personal, is that there's some restrictions you have to add. But since all this is numbers and it's abstracted, the only way we can add these restrictions and stuff is via some specific types of mathematics. I'm sorry, you wanted to say something?
No, sir.
Yeah. So the way we add these restrictions is by the specific types of mathematics. And that's what cryptography is. Cryptography is a subclass of mathematical formulas, algorithms, proofs, and whatever that really make sure that whatever happens on this, however we process information and we throw out information on computers, it's done in this very specific way. And clearly, the value of a computer is only if it's connected to other computers. So that means you have to be in a public environment. And since you have to be in a public environment, this creates some kind of problems, like someone could come there and try to, attack you in a certain way, especially since on the internet, no one knows who you are. And you also have some sort of added privacy and whatever. But the thing that I'm kind of over explaining this part right now, but the basic idea here is, and again, I'm sure everyone understands, it's like if you use a computer, you're gonna have some sort of secrets, and the moment you say the word secret, you absolutely imply that there's an adversary somewhere somehow, because anyone who doesn't know the secret is an adversary to the secret, and this is a very big part of what cryptography spends a lot of time trying to protect. It's people's secrets. And I think at this point you kind of get the idea of like how, I mean, if you're listening to this talk, you probably are somewhat aware of Bitcoin. So again, I'm probably just over explaining it right now and I'm getting a bit annoying. But anyway, the idea is that cryptography is this stuff that's supposed to help us maintain secret and manage secrets. And as cryptography started emerging and whatever, there are kind of like two main philosophies that came about, and these philosophies are kind of maybe as old as the early 1900s or maybe super late 1800s. And this guy called Kirchhoff, he said that the way you should actually think about cryptography and all these like algorithms and all this stuff that's supposed to save your secrets is you shouldn't like the secret itself should stay secret, but the method in which you try to maintain secrets and all this stuff should be public, because it's almost like if your house is so solid, if your fortress is so solid, you don't need to camouflage it or something or not tell people where it is. You tell people where it is, and no one is going to break down the door. And then the other option would be obviously here to have camouflage or live somewhere in an isolated place and no one knows where you live. And these two kind of ways are called, doing security through obscurity and transparency. And of course, us in Bitcoin, everyone agrees that security through transparency is the best way here, because since we have this collaborative environment in some ways, allowing other people to see how this security is done and how the algorithms are built is going to help us make it more stronger, but also is what allowed people to steal the Bitcoins from the ColdCard, because they also bad people were able to do this. But all in all, this clearly is a superior way. And if we would have not done security for transparency, would have never got to the point where we have Bitcoin, what it actually is today.
Yeah, I just want to double back a little bit on your adversarial talk. I mean, you don't even have to have a specific adversary. It's just sort of like a potential adversary. The same reason people put locks on their doors and even have walls on their houses. It's like we want to live here and we want to feel safe. Even if we don't have a specific adversary, the potential of an adversary means you have to think at least a few steps ahead to make sure someone doesn't break in. It's really just like the cryptography is like the lock on your digital door that you try to create, just like the lock on your house. It's not like you're constantly thinking of the enemy, but you have to prepare enough for the potential enemy that you can like relax and feel like you're secure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good clarification. And also another thing that's very specific to Bitcoin is that most of the time, if someone like steals your secret on the internet or something, they don't really gain a monetary benefit. They have to do things, maybe sell your data or something. But with Bitcoin specifically, this is actual money on the internet.
That's
So,
right.
so,
The
so
value is the data. Yeah.
the value is the data. Exactly, very well put. So that's even more of a reason why we're always in this adversarial mindset and whatever. And again, like Bitcoin is called the cryptocurrency. It has it in the name. It's like it's by default. So there's no way we can escape this thing and whatever. So anyway, hopefully by this point, even though I kind of hand waved quite a bit, and I really didn't get any specific about cryptography, I think I convinced you, I hope at least, that there's some magic math that we use that actually make sure that our secrets are kept secret and that we have secure ways to send secrets around. But backing up even before that, the first thing you have to do to make sure a secret is kept is it has to be a secret in the first place. And this is not just a philosophical thing, it's a very practical thing. So before we get to the point where we even apply any cryptography to any of this stuff, we need to have a secret number. We clearly need to have a secret because we want to guard things. Everything on the computer is a number. So clearly the very first step, 0, in anything that has to do with computers, you have to have a secret number. And this is deceptively hard, and it's way more hard than you imagine. Because first of all, how can we make sure something is secret? Well, the first step you may think to make sure something is secret, you just don't tell it to anyone. And that kind of makes sense. But remember, since everything is a number and everyone knows that everything is a number, if you actually pick like a very small number or something, adversaries could be like, well, why don't we just try out all the numbers that all the people may have used for something like this? And if we get lucky, we can steal their secrets. And if we don't, well, it was kind of easy to use a computer and search and find all this other stuff. So it's kind of like the thing is, like, you kind of have to come up with a way in which you have to figure out a number that no one will guess and that no one can predict and no one could guess, and you're supposed to like keep it secret and not give it to anyone else. And that second part is cryptography takes care of that. But now how can we generate a number that no one will guess? And the obvious answer is, well, we have to have a random number, because if the number is random, clearly no one else could come up with another random number, right? Because again, it's by definition number. I feel like I'm over explaining simple things right now a lot. And now you're thinking like, oh, well, this should be a very simple thing because we have this number machine that does number stuff. We just have to come up with a way and tell it, hey, do a random number. But a computer is incapable of ever producing a random number. Remember, all a computer is a bunch of light switches. And when the light switch is up, the light is always on. Of course, there are edge cases and whatever, but most of the time, if you turn the light switches in the same configuration, you're gonna get the exact same result. So it's impossible to have a machine that was built to be deterministic to produce randomness. But we're in a pickle because we need to create random numbers so that no one will guess these random numbers. So what do we do in this situation? And the answer may be surprising to most of the people, but we just have to use something that's not a computer. That's literally the actual academic answer. The only way we can have something that's truly random is we have to use something that we can't predict, that's actually chaotic, because the computer is the most unchaotic machine that we can create. And
so we need something analog from the real world, basically, from the meat space.
Precisely, because in the digital space, we can't do that. And the obvious way to kind of like do this, to get this type of entropy and get this source of randomness, is to look at real world events and then somehow digitize these things, and then we can be fairly certain that at least this number was generated randomly. And again, that's why a lot of people use dice for all this type of stuff, or coins and all these things, because a computer itself, it's incapable of doing this stuff. Now, that being said, initially that's how it really was, but since technology kind of evolved quite a bit, we realized that there's actually quite a lot of like random and unpredictable phenomena in the world, that a computer has access to them. And what really happens, we have all these circuitry and all these weird things that happen on these boards, and we have all these small light switches and whatever. And it so happens that if you actually go even a level lower than a transistor and whatever, you kind of have to understand that there's electricity going on there. And just because of the nature of electricity and pretty much how quantum physics and all these other weird things work out, there's some very, very, very small, minute events that happen there that are completely unpredictable. I mean, like a coin toss or dice roll, if you were to be able to like have the information of how many times you spun in the air or something, you could predict that. But I'm talking, these are phenomenon that with our current understanding of reality, they're completely unpredictable. And what a match made in heaven this is, because these already happened by default. Well, not quite by default, but they already happen on a computer. So when modern computers need like and hardware wallets and all this stuff, which is also a computer itself, when they need like a true random, a source of actual randomness, they actually use these small things that are attached there. And then some specific chips and some specific devices that exactly do this stuff, that provide quantum entropy. And that's how we solve this problem most of the time.
Is that how the ColdCard was supposed to work, but it wasn't working that way because it defaulted to an incorrect? Maybe this is a good time to explain maybe the difference between what was the ColdCard supposed to be doing and what was it actually doing, and how does that relate?
Yes, very good point. Well, so the thing is, like, we kind of got to the point right now where we understand that we need some kind of like source of randomness and whatever from the real world, but things are never that simple as they seem. The problem with things in the real world is that you never really get real randomness. You get randomness that has a few things here right or wrong. And the thing is, like, the way we kind of deal with this, we also have actually before that, I think we should really spend a bit more time, well, at least a bit of time clarifying what actually is randomness, because I kind of like keep talking about this thing and I kind of hand wave.
You keep saying like real randomness or not real. How do you what is real randomness, and how do you know that it's really random?
Well, let's just so we all know right now that we need a number to be random, but how do we know this number is random? Like if I say 5, is that a real random number? Like you immediately see how this question is almost nonsensical. It's like, how what am I even talking about here? But clearly there's some kind of a catch, because I mean, how can I talk 10 minutes that we need random numbers, and now I'm just claiming that we can't actually have a number that's random? You can't even ask that question. Right. But this philosophical gotcha is also a technical gotcha at the same time. And the reason why we're having a hard time trying to like console these two things is that we need a context of some sort. So the thing is, like, if I so let's just say I want to start off with a secret, and let's just say I want to come up with a number that no one can guess. Forget about randomness for whatever. Practically, how we can reason about this is that we want to come up with a number on the computer because we want it to be secret, and we want to make sure no one can guess this number. What is a good strategy to do this thing? Well, we definitely should not try to use a small number, because everyone is going to think you're going to think of a small number. So the first thing we should probably try to do is we should come up with a very, very big number. And it kind of makes a lot of sense, because if we're gonna say, like, when we're gonna use secrets for private keys or something, let's just use a really, 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 really big number. And if you actually generate this number by chance, what's gonna end up happening is that it's gonna be really hard for anyone to guess it. And this may sound counterintuitive, because all the number that you probably used in your real life weren't actually really that big, and that's why it's kind of easy for someone to guess them. But if your number would be so big as all the number of atoms in the universe, it just works out that if you truly come up with a random number, the chances of someone also coming up with the same number are so small that they're practically zero. So much so that all the random numbers and all the secrets that everyone uses on the internet and whatever are just based on this very simple principle. If the range of the number is big enough, then no one will come up with another random number. So the only thing you have to do right now is pick a big range and make sure that however you used you came up with this random number, no one can predict it. That's the way you're going to do it. And I would like to focus right now on an example of, well, how can you actually come up with a random number? And how can we use the same like simple 0 and 1 thing? And how actually this is the best and the most secure way to generate something. So let's just say right now we have a really, really big number, and we want to generate it. We wanted to generate a really big number that has a big number of digits. And obviously, the one thing we should try to do is, if we generate each digit and it's truly random, the thing is like the randomness of them is the entropy. It's called. It's additive, and it's gonna add up. But let's just take even a simpler example. Let's just say we have like 10 positions where we can have a 0 or a 1, 10 gaps. Mm-hmm. And now, if I would ask you to guess what is on the what not, and I somehow, I'm not even telling you how, I'm gonna write 0 or 1 on each of these things, and you have to guess them right now. And if I ask you, what do you think I put on the first position? Well, it's a 0 or a 1. So you literally have a 50-50 chance of guessing this. You want to say something?
No, just yeah. So it's 50-50, and then it compounds. So to guess the first and then the second number, you're saying it's going to be even harder. And then, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I didn't interrupt at all. No, so that's exactly what I'm trying to go at here. Is like the first one, it's a 50-50 chance, but then the second one, the chance halves pretty much, right? It's pretty obvious, right? It's a 20 because there's 4 things. So there's a quarter. So there's a 1 in 4 times. If you just say whatever you want, you're going to be right. And now as you create more positions here, it halves. And you can see how actually even in 10 positions, the number is very, very small. Now, if you have a 128th position, which is what we use, then we got to this chance that I was talking about, how it's 0. The idea is that you can't be lucky a lot of times in consecutive ways. That's kind of really the idea here. So the way you actually end up generating these random numbers, you pick some kind of a chaotic process and you generate each part of it. And if you just do it, if the number of the range of number is big enough, it won't matter because no one will be able to guess, because the chance of someone replicating your same coin toss or whatever, it's practically 0 in the reality we live in and whatnot.
So is that the basic definition of entropy? Is entropy the additive phenomenon of like adding randomness on top of randomness on top of randomness? And the further you go, the more entropy you have? Is that the basic definition? Because even reading the definition myself, I still have a hard time grasping what entropy is. And I think how you explained it made a lot of sense just there.
Well, that's just a very practical way in which you generate a number, and that it's not actually entropy.
Okay.
That is randomness. I'm
way wrong. See,
and here's where it gets even more confusing or whatever. So the thing is that we already everything that I described so here, it's so chaotic. And I already said, like, we're trying to use things that are not from a computer and they're chaotic. So by definition, these things cannot be measured somehow. There's no way to kind of measure it. But there is this concept of entropy, which doesn't measure actually the randomness of it, measure if something kind of could be random, but not really. So what do I mean by this? The thing is, like, even though I just claimed right now, let me contradict myself. Even though I claim that you cannot measure this thing, if we were to have if I were to generate one of these numbers with coin tosses or dice or whatever, and the number would be big enough, and I ask you, does this number look random to you? If the number isn't 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, you would be somehow, I feel like everyone would be tempted to say,
sure, looks random.
Looks random, right? Looks random. That's the important part. Looks random. And the thing is, what entropy kind of measure is that, does this look random? That's kind of like what it does. But let's get a bit more specific and let's try to introduce this concept of entropy, even though it feels like I kind of went all over the place at this point. The concept of entropy and the concept of entropy is the concept of measuring information. But the important distinction is we're measuring information and we're not measuring randomness, because I already said a lot of times we can't do this. So let's get back to our example of where we have two entities on the side of either thing, and they're trying to communicate each other with information in some ways. And the thing is, like with a light bulb, it's kind of hard to kind of have information loss or something. I mean, you could probably have there also, because you could have some fog or something like this between the villages. But when we have computers, and I'm sure everyone has used the phone, sometimes you can see that some of the information gets lost because of interference or any of these things. And there's this guy called Claude Shannon, and he said, well, you know what the thing is, we can actually come up with a way in which we can measure the quality of the information that was transmitted here. And the reason he came up with this is because he was working at Bell Labs and they were doing telephones, and they were like, well, we need to make sure that the information on the other part is the same information, that the information that was sent is the same information that was there. So he was like, well, we need to come up with a way to measure information. And the obvious place where you could go is like, well, remember, the most basic way we can reason about information is that something is either there or not there. And the thing is, like, remember how when I said that if we have 10 light bulbs and then each light bulb could be on or off, the total number of possible combinations here is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, 10 times. That makes a lot of sense. So this is 2 to the power of the 10. Now, is there a way in which we can reverse the question? And can we ask, if I have this many combinations and I'm using light bulbs that could be either on or off, if I have this many combinations,
and the final number, and can you get back to the 10 light bulbs? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm trying to say, and I'm having a hard time being clear about it. So if we know we're using light bulbs that could be on or off, that has 2 states, and we have 10 possible combinations, right? How many light bulbs do you need to come up with 10 possible combinations, right? It's the reverse of the question where we did 2 times 2 times 2. And the way we kind of reason about this is actually quite simple, because the intuitive way, you would just get down, start writing all of them down, and then you could see how many are. But the reverse of exponentiation, which is what it's called when you multiply multiple things, it's the logarithm, which is just asking these questions and whatever. And if we have like the number 8, for example, it's like, how many light bulbs do you need to have 8 states? Well, it's kind of very simple, because you kind of try to write the number 8 as a power of 2. So 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. So if it's 2 to the power of third, logarithm is just what was that number at the top there? What is the exponential number? And now you may think this is such a you're pretty much doing this. And what is the possible reason for you of doing this? Well, remember how I mentioned that the important concept here was complexity? So the thing is, like, when you try to ask how many light bulbs you need, you're asking how much complexity is here. So when you actually see, you can look at a number and you can ask how many light bulbs were they used to create this number. And if it's a big number of light bulbs, then that means it has a lot of complexity. And if it has a lot of complexity, it means it's harder for people to kind of guess. And that's kind of the basis of how the concept of entropy came about, is you have a number and you're trying to see how complex how complex this number is. But a better way to kind of think about it is like how compact this number could get, pretty much. Does that make sense?
Somewhat, yes. It ties into a question I had that maybe this could help. So, because when I was reading the definition of entropy, it seemed almost counterintuitive to me. There's a section that said like a sequence can appear random, unpredictable, but have low entropy if the outcomes are not uniformly distributed or if the source is biased. which to me sounded backwards. I was like, well, if the outcomes are not you want uniform outcomes, like that almost seems less random if it's uniform, right? So it kind of confused me, like how is uniformly distributed leading to entropy? I don't know. Do you understand the question? Even
I understand exactly what's right, and this is the tension of the whole thing that we're trying to get at here. So the thing is, like, this new operation that I introduced to you, and which I think most of the people are going to find it very counterintuitive. Sorry, I know I found it incredibly counterintuitive when I first this concept. Remember this logarithm thing, which is how many combination of twos you can have in this number. This is pretty much trying to figure out how much more you can compress this number. So, all right. So the thing is, like, you want to come up with a number that no one can guess, right? And let's just say all the number that you can come up with clearly could be some kind of like a power of 2, because we could write it in this one, in this 0 1 0 1 0 1, and you multiply the number of states. Now, if your number is something that is easy to write down, or something that looks nice and clean, intuitively someone else could kind of like guess that. Like, if your number is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, maybe this number looks a bit weird in decimal form, but when you actually write it as a power of 2, you're like, oh my god, this is 2 to the 2 multiplied times. Of course, it's so obvious. So what you're really trying to do here, you're trying to make sure that your number is not only jumbled and just looks weird and strange, not only in decimal form, but also in this system where you kind of where you kind of like define numbers as light bulbs. That's what you're trying to do here. So the basic idea here is that if you it's just kind of crazy, because it feels like there's quite a few concepts that kind of are dependent on each other, and I'm just struggling which one should I introduce first without confusing people and whatever. And the simplest way here is just to kind of sit down and do the math of how this kind of works out.
Someone in the chat actually just asked, was kind of where we're talking about, but shouldn't we just say that entropy measures the amount of randomness?
No, that is exactly
that's wrong, right? I was like, I know that wasn't right, but I didn't know why it wasn't right.
That is exactly because. So the thing is, okay, let's start from another point of view. So we want to have a number that no one can guess, and that looks unpredictable, and that looks weird and whatever. And if we use this logarithm function, and we see log 2 of this number, we're gonna see how much more. Okay, no, I have a better way to do it. So let's just say we have the number 1 1 1 1 1 10 times, right? The reason why this number doesn't feel random is because it's easy to define it. It's like, oh, you just have the number 1 10 times. Now, if I were to have the number 7 3 2 1 0 3 5 6 7, there's no way for you to define this number in a simpler, more compact way.
I see. Yeah.
So why don't I don't even know why I didn't say this for the beginning. So the more so if you have a number and you can make it compact by any conceivable way you could come up with, then that means someone else could start from the compact form and guess your number. Now, if your number can never be compacted, it means there's no pattern in it. So it's somewhat random, and that's why no one else could guess it. I really don't know why I didn't say this from the beginning. It was so simple to say it like this.
It's hard to talk about. I understand.
So what we're trying to, so what entropy measures, it's how much more you can compact a number. That's what it does. It's as simple as that. So if a number cannot be compacted anymore, there's a very high chance that no one else could come up with it, because he can't start from the compact form. That's really what it is. As simple as that, right? So now, getting back to the question, well, how could I say this right now, and how could I still claim entropy is not a measurement of randomness? So let's just say right now we have a number that it's very jumbled up, like 3 2 1 7. It has a lot of digits that don't repeat themselves or whatever. So we cannot compact this number anymore. Now, on the surface, if you just have the number like that, clearly no one could come up with it because he can't predict how you came up with this. But if someone has an information on what methods you use to actually generate this number, even though this number has high entropy and looks like it's jumbled up and doesn't have a compact form, if someone has information about what was the process in which you generated this thing that looks like it has high entropy, then your number is not random. And this is exactly the most important distinction between this randomness. Randomness means no one can predict it. Entropy means it looks like it can be predicted. That's kind of the main thing.
It's like pi. Like the number pi looks random, but anyone can calculate pi instantly and know all the seemingly random numbers.
That is exactly the best way to put it, and this is exactly what cryptography deals with, and this is the hard problem, because the thing is, you can measure if it looks like no one could generate this thing, but there's no way to measure that it was random, because you can look at the process you made and you can say if it's chaotic enough and whatever, but you can never actually really be sure about it. And that's really is the main tension and the main differentiation, and absolutely the most crucial and important nuance that we have in Bitcoin between entropy and randomness.
Yeah, wow, we could have done probably 3 hours on this and still barely like scratch the surface. I know we're getting close to the end. I just wanted to like get your thoughts on like what's kind of we've been super not hypothetical but abstract in trying to explain all this. Let's maybe try to bring it just a little back to the practical. For people watching this who were affected by ColdCard or who weren't and just want to be more secure in their wallet generation in the future and want to know, like, is there ways, well, I guess two questions. Is there ways for people to test the randomness of their generation if they're trusting a device to do it for them? And what are the maybe simplest ways people can ensure that there is randomness in their generation, whether it's using dice or something else? Like, what would you recommend?
So clearly the thing is, like, again, this problem that exists here clearly was also a problem in the ColdCard. And the problem, specifically what happened with the ColdCard, is exactly that, is that the entropy was actually very high. Those numbers were weird, but because there was an error in the way they tried to create a randomness in the unpredictability, and someone else got wind of this, that's why the ColdCard seeds were hackable, because they had high entropy, but they weren't random. And again, this isn't like a new concept and whatever, and cryptography deals with this all the time. So if you want to be super paranoid and whatever, then you should just dumb things down as much as you can. And that's why even ColdCard had this option of using dice rolls, because what ends up happening with dice rolls and whatever, as primitive as it looks like, they're actually going to be quite good. Quite a good mechanism, because it's simple. You can look at it, you can inspect it, and you can see, like, this dice look pretty good. Whereas a computer, how many people on the planet could actually verify that thing? So that's why a lot of these wallets and a lot of like people recommend trying to do this thing. However, that being said, we have enough technology and we have a good understanding of how computers work that this already should be done with a mechanism inside them. But if you're really paranoid and you want to, and you don't even trust this, or you want to be protected, that's why you should always generate your own entropy and use one of those primitive methods and stuff like this. And one thing that I feel like we should probably add here is, like, because of the way the math works out and whatnot, it's kind of like, even if a lot of people, when they hear like they should use dice or coins, they're thinking like, what if the dice aren't casino grid and whatever? What if it has a small bias and whatever? Remember, with each of those numbers that you add there, the error, the chance of someone like actually guessing your number goes to zero. So even if a casino dice or coin that you use have a small bias, it still wouldn't matter. And there's no really intuitive way to kind of really show this than just sit down and do the math, and then you'll see that this is actually correct.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking casino grade dice seems a little extreme. It's like if you're rolling enough dice, any bias in the dice, I mean, first of all, they'd have to know the bias of the dice, or that's a whole other thing to talk about. But yeah, the randomness is still quite random. And then you can also swap out dice and in between rolls or things like that, and add extra aspects. But no, I like that. Yeah, and that's just personally, I mean, that's what I'm doing going forward, is I just want to control that. I don't want to trust the black box. I want to roll my own dice and know that I've created something that is, if not truly random, at least as random as we can get. Yeah, any other closing thoughts that you have, or if you want to plug anything for people to check out, go ahead.
I mean, the closing thought is that, again, the sad reality of this is that we're not gonna get people to roll dice and whatever, and
Yeah, most
and
people,
and
yeah. Well,
and
that actually, that brings up one other question I wanted to ask you. Do you foresee, or have you thought about any other ways that we could help normies, without a better way of saying it? Or do you foresee a new UX experience or a new system? I mean, because the BIP words that we use, was it BIP 39? That's a relatively new thing in Bitcoin. Do you foresee something like that happening that could simplify this even more for users, that could make them more secure without all of the extra, nerdy dice rolling and things like that?
So the thing is that clearly the best security model here is to eliminate as much complexity in the system and whatever. So that's why you generate, when you do those dice rolls or you flip the coins, literally you select each light switch which is going to be there. So that's very simple. It's very obvious. There's nothing that could go wrong. There's everything you can look and inspect at it. And the BIP 39 standards and BIP 32 afterwards is just doing a simple math operation that converts those weird numbers into words. So there's literally nothing fancy about it. It's almost like you translate it in this human language. The good part about it, there's nothing that could go wrong. The bad part about it is like they're kind of you still have to have these words and whatever. And if you do this, then there's less things that could go wrong. But there are quite a few other solutions now where they're trying to use these seedless methods, where you have multiple devices and you have multi-signature thing, and you don't have any of the seed. And the assumption here is that, well, you're always going to have a computer and a laptop, right? And presumably you're not going to lose them both at the same time. So if that is the case, you can just kind of have and also if someone is to compromise your computer or your phone, they're not going to do both at the same time, though that's kind of a debatable assumption for a lot of people. So in that instance, if you have a 2 out of 3 or whatever, you can have some kind of a seedless thing. That's kind of what's happening, and I think that's where it's going to go, because again, it's just very unrealistic to think people are going to have paper backups of these things, so yeah.
No, I understand. Do you have a few minutes that we could do some questions from the chat?
I have all the time you want. I'm in no rush.
Here, let's go through real quick. I already pulled that one earlier. Let me see what we have here. Oh, here, someone was asking, do you recommend generating seed with Sparrow, cold Sparrow not connected?
So the thing is, like, so the idea of the generating seed and whatnot, presuming the algorithm and there's no bugs and whatever, the generation of the seed is going to be as secure. If everything works as intended, the seed is absolutely like secure. But the reason why you kind of like try to have it in a cold environment, something that's not connected to the internet, it's mostly because so there's 2 risks here. There's a risk of, is this thing doing what I want it to do? And we already said in this case, yes. But then it's like, yeah, but is my device that I'm using this on compromised, or is there any malware and whatever? So these are kind of 2 separate things. The first step is to use some software or method that actually does what you want it to do. And then you're trying to do it in an environment that, if that worked and that is okay, let's hope no one else has access to this computer or something, whatever. So obviously the best advice is to always, I mean, this is life-saving. This is going to go up in value by a lot in the next years. So you should always take all the precautions and whatever. And also, this is something you shouldn't necessarily do every day. Think about it. It's something you do once, maybe a few years or something. So I should always go with whatever seems to be the more secure and paranoid.
Yeah, go all out. And I just have a hard time trusting any device like a computer or a phone to generate them that's going to be connected to the internet at all. Like, just unplugging it from the internet while you do the generation isn't going to save you if your device is compromised, and then later those seeds can be uploaded. So I would just, if you are going to do that, I would just recommend building a custom built computer, or buying an old laptop that you can turn off or pull out the Wi-Fi guts and make sure it's fully offline. I just wouldn't recommend going back online with a device after you've generated seeds with it.
Yeah, the very important, if you do go that route, is never. It's not like never ever connected to the internet. Not even before, like never. So
yeah. And then let's see. So this ties into another question I have, but how about PRNG? Is it not random? Maybe you can explain a little the difference between TRNG and PRNG.
Right. So the thing is, like, the way we defined entropy is that we have a string of numbers and whatever, and it has to look all jumbled up and whatnot. All right. And the thing is, like, we can actually do that very easy on a computer. We just want to, if we take some numbers, any numbers you have, and if you take any number, it could even be number 1 or number 0. If you multiply it, jumble it, do it times this number, divide it, this and that and whatever. If you do this enough times, at the end, there's going to be a really big and jumbled number come out on the other way. So the number that's going to come out on the other, we can write some kind of a function or something, and whatever is going to come out on the other way is going to have high entropy. Remember, high entropy means the number cannot be compacted, which means it's hard for someone else to guess. But now the thing is, like, well, and we clearly have this type of algorithms, and we use them even in Bitcoin for mining and whatnot, and they're even used when you generate private keys. But the idea is that everyone knows what this function is. So even though the output looks like looks like it has high entropy, if you use the number 0 to start with, well, anyone else can take the number 0 and get your resulting number and whatever. So in reality, how this happens and whatnot is that you usually use one of those functions that's implemented on a computer and that actually jumbles the number up quite a bit. But then you also use some kind of like entropy, like from the real world, like a dice roll, or like one of those things that I said that are on the circuit boards that have quantum entropy or whatnot. So you're gonna get like a really chaotic thing that no one else can reproduce because they don't understand how it was done, like the dice roll or the quantum stuff. And then you put that in a pseudo random number generator, and then now you know that the input is hard to reproduce, but also the output, and you kind of have two methods here, which is happening. And what happened in the ColdCard, they were supposed to do exactly this, but there was just a small error in the code, and this wasn't done properly. So the specific input that you were doing there, it wasn't like an actual big number. It was a very small range of numbers. And what people did, they just tried all these numbers that they can, and it was very small that you can find it very fast.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, someone was saying, let's see, you can test your seed words on this website. I don't know what this website is, but I wouldn't recommend putting your seed words into any website. I think he's saying maybe do it. Yeah, he says unplug your computer to do this. All seems very risky, Ted. I'm not I wouldn't just plug my seed words into any website, even if my computer was unplugged, like you were saying, because eventually you're going to plug it back in. So yeah, unless you do that all offline, like analog, and you print things out and do it on paper, yeah, I wouldn't be messing with that. So
the Ian Coleman website is actually quite well known. It has been around for a long time, and it's pretty much a lot of tools to like generate seeds and stuff like this. And it's also hosted on a website, but you can take the website yourself.
Yes.
And run it offline. Like it's pretty much like a wallet that you open in the browser. Well, it's not quite a wallet, it just does the seed generation, and you can test it to do a lot of things and whatever. So I hope what Ted was trying to say is that maybe you get one of these computers you never plug to the internet, you copy paste this, you copy this thing and you use this offline. So even though it looks like it's used in the browser, you're not using it as a website pretty much, right? But the website itself is just more of a demo thing, and you should never under any circumstances put any information there, because the person who owns the website will just see everything that's happening on the website pretty much.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, Ted was saying just to unplug when you do it. You have to go the extra mile to be safe there, Ted, and actually have a device that is never connected to the internet if you're going to do that. Let me see here. While I'm looking here, I had a question about XOR, actually, XOR, because I saw there was some controversy about that, and I know Bitcoin and I think Linux uses that. I wasn't even sure what it is based on my initial research, and I didn't delve too deep in it. Did you mention it earlier when you said and/or and XOR? Is XOR a different function?
So the thing is like, the thing is like, in normal operations, in decimal, in numbers, we have these very easy to understand operations. 1 plus 2 equals this, and da 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 da, and whatever. But in this number system, which is binary, which is you either have a 0 or a 1, it's quite hard to kind of like have the same operations that we have here. And since the system is so primitive and this base is so small, we kind of had to come up with different ways to get results between these numbers. So if we were to add or multiply the 0 and 1, we wouldn't really able to get anything interesting out of it. Mm-hmm. It's too limited. So then people realize that, and this is probably goes even back to antiquity or something, but what we can do with these numbers, we can come up with another set of operations. One way to think about this is like you can consider 0 to be false and 1 to be true. And I'm sure everyone heard of these things, and you start having logical operations between these two, in the sense of like, if you have 0 and 1, if you have false and true, then this must be false. If you have false and false, then this must be false. Or if you have true and true, this must be true. Mm-hmm. But so remember how actually I said you can have all the combination of each one with each other. Depending on the operation you use, this does different things. That's really what it is. So the end, the one that I explained here, it's end, which is, again, it's just seeing it as if two things are true, then they're both true, right? It's intuitive like that. So that's what these things are. And source specifically, it's kind of a bit of a weirder one, because what SOAR is like, every time you have, every time something is, so SOAR is like, if you have true and true, that gives you true. If you have true in any of these things, then that gives you true. That's what SOAR is, pretty much, right? And this may seem like it's useless, because at least with the end and all the other ones we use in normal life, but this just allows us to have another way to like combine these numbers between them and have an operation. And the good part about SOAR, which again, I'm struggling to kind of like explain this without actually really sitting down and writing on paper what it does. The good thing about SOAR is that if you combine two numbers with SOAR, so if you have a number that is somewhat jumbled up and has high entropy, and if you have another one that you don't know if it has high entropy, maybe it has high, maybe it has low. If you combine them via SOAR, this could only make the resulting number have a higher entropy. It could never decrease it. That's this very special property of this thing. And when in cryptography, when you try to make sources of entropy, you use SOAR and stuff like that. But it's a bit more complicated than that. Like if you were to kind of like, if you do two, let's just say you want to be even more paranoid. One way to do it, you could generate one seed just doing coin tosses, and another one with doing dice. And then you do them, you write them both down in binary, and then you sort them. And if you do this, even if one of them had a bias or had something like this, it's only additive. That's the idea here. Combining entropy numbers for SOAR, the entropy is just additive. And again, if you sit down and do the math, it's more than obvious why this is the case.
Is it correct me if I'm wrong, is it used in like Bitcoin Core and different things to combine sources of entropy? So they're pulling different sources of randomness and then trying to combine those into a bigger number, like you're saying, to create more randomness?
Yes, but in way more complex. I mean, that's the basis of it pretty much, but it's in incredibly more complex and more robust ways. It's not just as brute as like this.
Well, thank you so much, man. I think we've reached the end here. Thank you so much for your time. I've learned a lot. I've got confused a little bit, and definitely have a lot more stuff to like research. Like I hope people take this as something like, again, to push back on the expert line that I talked about earlier. Don't trust the experts, in any areas of life. You can be your own expert, do some research, take this podcast as a jumping off point to dive in and do your own research into understanding this stuff, because I don't think anyone's going to understand it in one sitting like this completely, but hopefully it helped clarify some things and showed you where you could delve in and do some more research yourself. Do you want to go ahead and like I was saying earlier, do you want to anything you're working on now that you want to talk about, or just what websites and where can people find you?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess like I've tried too much maybe to just keep keep away from the math, and maybe I think that maybe end up confusing people. But yeah, I mean, you should try to learn about this topic because it's literally the most important thing that has to do with securing your digital life in whatever. You can find me on raw_avocado on X. I tweet a lot. I guess I like to annoy people a lot of the times. My latest, like, video where I made the discoveries is in my pinned message, so you can go and watch that if you haven't seen that.
Go watch that. Is that just on X or is that on YouTube as well?
It's
How
also
can
on
people
YouTube.
find that?
It's also on YouTube, but it's mainly on X. You can find it there, and it's slightly better quality on X if you watch it in 4K full screen. Slightly better.
What's it called? What's the name of the video?
I didn't use the name on X because I tried to clickbait it. You just have to go to my profile.
I think it's pinned on your profile, isn't it?
Yeah. That's the way to do it. I mean, the name is what everyone knows about Bitcoin launch is wrong. So yeah, but just go on my profile, raw_avocado or Alex Waltz. You should be able to find me. Or if it's you can go on alexwaltz.com. That is ALEXWELTZ, Waltz, spelled like that's.com. And I have another short movie that's coming up right now. Should be released somewhere in next week or something like that. I'm also working on some other projects right now that should also come during the next weekend and whatnot. But I don't really like to talk about things before because I feel like it steals for it. So yeah, anyway, if you have any questions or something, just feel free to shoot me a DM. I'm pretty responsive and whatever, and I'm more than willing to help.
Yeah, and highly recommend to go watch that video he released. Was last month or 2 months ago now. It's time flies, but really, really good piece of documentary work. It's not only interesting information, it's very well put together, good cinematography and fast-paced piece of filmmaking. And where would Bitcoin? Well, the reason we care so much about educating people about stuff like this is because we're a non-custodial exchange. We don't hold your coins for you. We immediately send you your Bitcoin to your own wallet. So we want your wallet to be secure, and we want you to understand everything that you possibly can in order to be secure and feel safe in that. So if you have any questions about anything, feel free to email me too at z.adair@bitcoinwell.com, or just go to our website at bitcoinwell.com if you have any questions. And we try to do these once a month. So stay tuned and catch the next episode. But thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you everyone that had questions and gave feedback. And everyone have a great day. Be safe out there and keep learning. That's the main thing. Just keep learning. All right, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.